So this story I wrote actually in the last year of my PhD, and there was a creative writing workshop at the University of Connecticut with Naeem Murr, who's a wonderful novelist and also a really great teacher. And so around this time, I was also making my first venture onto Match.com, which gladly I don't have to do anymore. But what I thought was really interesting on Match.com is you would find these pictures of potential dates, and they would have cropped out their former significant other, but you could still see like an eye or an ear or an arm or something like that. So it was kind of a weird experience, and I found one where it looked like, again, someone had cropped out previous significant other. And I actually clicked on the little thumbnail, and this big picture opened up, and it was this extremely handsome Indian man with two of his children next to him. And when I read the profile, it said he was a widower and that he had two kids and his wife had passed away. So I sort of started imagining what it would be like to, I mean, I didn't contact him, but what it would be like to date someone in that position and kind of enter into their family. I was also at the time obsessed, if you know Lori Moore's self-help book, which is all second person. So you'll also see second person in this because I was obsessed with that book. And I'd like to, I can't really see, but is Jesse still out there somewhere? So, oh, there you are. So I'd like to dedicate this reading to Jesse because I think he's the only reason I'm really here, and it's good that I'm coming back to the creative world. So thanks, Jesse, for inviting me. Sorry. So this piece is called Second Wife. There is no competing with a dead wife and mother. People do not long for what they already have. What you do get, though, is gratitude, and that makes up for it a bit, as long as you know your place, as long as you don't ask to be included in family photographs, but wait patiently for an invitation, as long as you realize that you are the second wife and would have no place at all if wife number one had not given up the ghost so unexpectedly, as long as you quietly accept that you cannot join your husband and his kids on the trip they are taking to the cemetery today, the 4th anniversary of her death. You have earned your place with patience and understanding. You smiled sadly when Alice cried the morning you baked banana bread for breakfast, and she remembered how much her mother loved the smell. You smiled the same sad smile when Alice told you this was the 3rd year that the tulips were blooming at the edges of the yard without her mother there to see them. She had planted different types each year. Apricot beauties, their first year in the house, pink Christmas dreams for Alice, purple princes for Ryan, and black queen of the nights for her 40th birthday. You smiled when Alice reminded Ryan how their mother used to make them guess which color would bloom first. You smiled patiently when Danny and the kids began laughing when they remembered something funny about her, like how her snowballs never held together but just dissolved into white dust mid-flight. You smiled while they laughed and waited for them to let you in on the joke. You smiled and nodded when Danny said he wanted to invite her mother to the wedding. Her mother, the one who scans you like a spotlight. And you smiled with sad concern when her mother started crying at the sight of Alice walking down the aisle, sprinkling flower petals in front of you. You stopped for a second and waited while people put their arms around her sobbing body. And then you smiled while you walked down the rest of the aisle. You smile all the time. Sometimes you think your face will crack and splinter if you have to smile again. Danny was the only man on the dating site whose marital status was widowed. You paused when you saw the word, your eyes floating to the ceiling while you considered. Then you clicked the thumbnail for a better look. Expanded and enlarged, his profile picture showed his face framed by two smaller faces, his children from the dead wife. A tossed gauntlet, this photo. I'm a package deal, it said. Take it or leave it. Your last date was with a 40-year-old lawyer from Glastonbury who hadn't looked much like his profile picture in over a decade. During your second drink, he told you that his last match had showed him her boob job within the first 30 minutes of meeting her. You were not sure at the time, and still couldn't say for sure, if he was telling you a story about a bad date to suggest that you were a better one, or giving you suggestions for how you could be a better date. But this man, you thought, looking at the widower and his children, this is a guy who's really lived, a guy who has been forced to reckon with his emotions. This is a man who has lost, and so must know how to love. On the first date, neither of you brought it up at all until the third glass of wine. I was sorry to read about the loss of your wife, you finally say, during a break in the conversation, a line you had practiced in variant versions in the car ride to the bar. I'm so sorry that your wife passed. I'm sorry to hear that you lost your wife. I'm so sorry about your wife. Danny's face funneled. Thank you, was all he said. But in later weeks, he told you more, said it only made sense for you to have the details. He told you it was like 2 deaths. The first was finding out about the accident, the news like an icy thrust into the chest. The second death, after those slow weeks in the hospital, watching the bruises fade to purple, then to brown, then to yellow, watching the cuts on her face scab and heal, watching her body repair itself, only to die anyway when her heart stopped and wouldn't start again. The first time you made love, he cried and apologized, then cried more, and you pressed the side of his face into the bony plate of your chest. And afterwards, he thanked you, and you thought, yes, this is a man who knows how to love. During those first months, you saw him only once or twice a week, and he never stayed the night. He couldn't stand the thought of the children waking up in the morning without him, but he called you every day, apologized, and thanked you. The kids adore you now, but when you first met, they were like shelves of delicate china around you, ready to smash if you reached carelessly or shifted your hips an inch too far to either side. Alice, the older one, stared at you from behind her round glasses, her lips twitching as though she were reading to herself. Ryan was excited to have a visitor and gave you the full tour of the house. He pulled you by the hem of your dress into his bedroom to show you his Legos and his Superman pajamas, and then introduced you to the cat named Pong, who was sleeping at the end of the bed. He said, Pong's my mommy's cat, but my mommy's dead, so we all take care of him now. And you said, I know. And Ryan said, how do you know that? And you glanced at Danny, who was standing in the doorway, and said, your father told me. And then Ryan looked at Pong and frowned, and you tried to put your hand on top of Ryan's head, but just before you reached him, he dropped to his knees so he could look Pong in the face while he petted him. So instead, you sat on the bed and petted Pong too. Then Pong stood up, arched his back to stretch, and stepped into your lap, purring and flexing his paws. Ryan watched for a moment, just one moment, and then he slapped at your face and slapped at the cat until Danny grabbed his hands and told him that he knew he was upset, but that he wasn't allowed to hit. You left the room and waited in the hallway. When Danny came out, you insisted that Ryan not be made to apologize. He was only 5 after all. Later, you sat next to Ryan at the kitchen table and drew a picture of a cat on a sheet of paper while he drew a picture of a car. And when you gave the cat a big toothy smile, Ryan started laughing and looked up at you, and you laughed back and looked at Danny. But Danny was staring out the window at the tulips that were blooming at the edges of the yard. After Ryan went to bed, you and Danny and Alice played Monopoly on the living room floor. What do you want to be? Alice asked, offering you a handful of metal playing pieces. You said, I'm always the boot. Alice fisted her hand and said, but Mom was always the boot. And you said, okay, I'll be the thimble then. And from then on, you were always the thimble. When you moved in permanently, they all wanted you there. The kids even joined you in bed that first morning, Ryan sharing your pillow and twirling your hair between his tiny fingers. Danny made room for you in the bathroom by finally removing the rest of her things, her unfinished prescriptions, the half-full or half-empty bottles of lotion and shampoo, the used emery boards still white with her fingernail dust. It was these things, Danny said, that were the hardest to discard, items that in their ordinariness, were the most devastating reminders of her abruptly ended life, but also, somehow, the clearest proof that she had ever lived at all. In exchange, you changed the way you made coffee, the way you folded laundry. You learned to make sandwiches differently for the kids who said your tuna salad had too much mayo, your egg salad too much mustard. You learned to draw your knife diagonally rather than horizontally across the bread. You adjusted all sorts of recipes to better suit their tastes. Eventually, they asked for some meals the way you made them: lasagna with spinach in the ricotta, spaghetti sauce with diced carrots and mushrooms and peas. The first time her mother came to visit, you were drying dishes. Her mother stared at you from the doorway, slowly eyeing the plate and then the towel and then your face before she came to sit at the kitchen table where the kids were eating lunch. She did this because it hurt her to see how you had taken her daughter's place, and she did this to remind you that you had only taken her daughter's place. But you cannot hate her. Like you, she wishes she could cough up the ugliness that fills herself like smoke. And you don't need to be reminded that you are the second wife. When you stand in front of the full-length mirror to check your outfit, you wonder if you are standing in the same spot she stood when she did the very same thing. When you walk through the house, how often are you stepping an imaginary path that she cleared long before you? Do you sit in her spot on the sofa without knowing it, your body filling some mold in the cushions already made by her body? Do the wine glasses, so infrequently used, still hold invisible fingerprints that she left when she put them back in the cupboard? The shelves in the office hold hundreds of her books, some of which contain her scribbled marginalia. You flip through them and try to understand why she underlined the passages she did. You yearn to know her better, yet you are terrified of what you will learn, the ways in which you overlap, the ways in which you are simply a repetition of that which came before, but perhaps worse, the gaps and fissures that you do not fill. At night, you sometimes fear that her ghost will rise up angrily at the foot of your bed, her long, dark hair fanned by a wind imperceptible to you, and she will point and mouth some silent curse. But maybe this is also what you want: an angry ghost, prove your presence is a threat. All you feel is the heavy weight of her incontestable claim on this house. You have never been much of a cat person, but it is you who cuts the lumps of matted hair out of Pong's long coat. It is you who takes him to the vet. It is you who scoops his litter. It is you he cries at in the morning when his bowl is empty. You water her plants. You weed her garden. You love the kids, and they love you. They were 4 and 8 when their mother died, 6 and 10 when you moved in. They are 8 and 12 now. You have done the math. Very soon, Ryan will have known you as long as he knew her. A few weeks ago, you took Alice to buy her first bra, and soon you'll be explaining tampons and maxi pads. You have endurance. You run marathons. You do Pilates. You can wait this out. Yes, you love the kids, and they love you, but some days you can't help but hate Alice's nose, the perfectly straight and slender bridge, and Ryan's large brown eyes. Some days you hate their bronze skin. No one will ever mistake these children as your own. They look nothing like you. You are Irish. You have frizzy red hair and pale blue eyes. You start to pink if you spend more than 15 minutes in the sun. Your nose is snubbed and freckled. The kids look nothing like Danny either, but this doesn't matter. They are his, and he is theirs, and that is enough. Vasectomied years ago, Danny is done having children. You knew this coming in, and you agreed to it, and it would do no good to change your mind now. But you had no idea then how childlessness would feel. You sensed the taut stretch of some other kind of virginity, a hymen deep within that can only be broken from the inside. One day in the grocery store, you mistakenly turn into the baby aisle and weep when you see the tiny spoons they sell next to the jars of mashed food. You avoid looking directly at pregnant women as if they are solar eclipses. You ache to be someone's first and foremost. You want a guarantee of indispensability. Sometimes you want to ask Danny to tell you about pregnancy, about labor, about birth, but you think that when the words come out of his mouth, they will flay the skin right off your face. Or maybe they will push past your tightly pressed lips, creep up your nostrils, slip down your throat, burrow in through tear ducts, fill your ear canals, find any entrance in they can, then latch on like small hooks, taking root in the delicate inner flesh and slowly pull you inside out. Sometimes you fantasize that a man shows up, claiming to have been her lover for many years, claiming to be the father of the children. Sometimes you imagine that your brakes fail and you slam your car into a tree. Later in the hospital, you will awaken to the beep of monitors and to the soft weight of Alice's body asleep across your legs, and Danny slouched in a chair with Ryan in his lap. Unlike her, you would awaken. Alice has been acting strangely. You catch her clutching photographs of her mother close to her face. She is forgetting her, she says, forgetting her face, forgetting her voice, forgetting the scent of her hair and skin. And she is angry that Ryan does not mind his forgetting as much, and that she has to be the guardian of her mother's memory. Dad won't do it with me anymore, she says. It's like it scares him, or he thinks it's wrong or something. So you take Alice to the basement and you cut open the boxes. You are surprised by how much Danny has kept. You find a long black gown that you recognize from one of the pictures on the living room wall. You find socks, stockings, a bra. You find her jewelry box and hand Alice her crucifix, her earrings. Alice cups them in her hands like water. You spray her favorite perfume in the air, and you and Alice sit there together in a mist of fragrance that smells like the beach. Alice lifts her face and closes her eyes and takes in deep breaths of it. And when she opens her eyes, she looks at you and smiles, and you smile back. But you cannot go through the pictures or watch the videos. You cannot. You tell Danny this is what he needs to do, and you leave the house so that he can. But something happens that day that you don't understand. When you come back, they all look at you as if it's you and not her they've been talking about. The television is a glowing blue screen. Not knowing what to say, you ask, "How was it?" They do not answer. But Danny tells you later that he thinks they should go, just the three of them, to visit her grave on the anniversary of her death. Does that bother you? He asks. And you say no because there is nothing else to say. The very question excludes the possibility of saying anything else. As much as you want to scream or throw something, a better person would not be bothered. A better person would understand. When they leave, you kiss Danny on the lips and Alice on the cheek and put your hand on Ryan's head. You wave to them while the car backs up the drive. You look around the empty house. You do the laundry, wash the dishes, pay some bills. You speak out loud to the cat, and your voice sounds hollow and strange. The only sounds you hear are the sounds that you make. You go downstairs to the basement and find her gown and bra. In front of the mirror, you try them on. Your breasts float in her bra. The gown puddles at your feet. You look like a girl in her mother's clothes. Outside, the sun is shining, so you throw on some old jeans, slather on sunscreen, and grab the garden tools from the garage. You kneel at the edges of the yard, break up the hard-packed ground around the flowers, sift out the dislodged weeds, toss them in a pile. The soil stains your hands brown, and the dirt cakes under your fingernails. And then before you know what you are doing, you are clawing up the earth. The hard, woody bulbs are easy enough to find, flagged by stiff green stems still standing, even though the flowers have already bloomed and gone for the year. Hating yourself and hating everyone else, you pull them up and out. Not all of them, not enough to be noticed, and you put them in a pile. You will unearth a few more each year. Thank you.